Welcome to OkState Daily. Casey Porter here, joined by Coach Rainwater after a weekend of baseball and a week of baseball that had a lot of different mixed results. Coach, I'm going to peel the scab off. Sunday was an awesome day. Everything went well. Harrison Bodendorf showed to be a stopper again. Hunter Watkins was good. The offense played offense. They hit home runs. They got on base. They stole bases. They bunted. They had safety squeezes. Sunday was perfect. It was absolutely awesome. The two games before that were not, and I'm just going to peel it off right now. We have higher expectations for Oklahoma State than to go 2-2 on the weekend at home or the week at home against Illinois State. And Winthrop, not to be negative, not to be any of that, or not to say that we don't think this team still isn't Omaha quality or any of that, but just to say, hey, higher expectations of that, but Sunday was great. Make it rain.
Yeah, so, you summed it up pretty well there as far as, what we talked about last week, right, was coming off emotionally draining and physically draining weekends where you're playing top opponents, that sort of stuff, where we thought it looked really good was being able to win a close ball game, a 3-2 ball game in that midweek game, right? And then we turn right around and lose to them, right? And then we lose Friday night. And I think what people need to understand is, and I think they even said this on the radio broadcast or the TV broadcast, is that everybody's got a Friday night starter.
Yes.
Right? And your Friday night starter needs to be better than their Friday night starter in order to have a chance, right? And where you really see a difference between your top programs and maybe your mid-level programs or even your bottom programs is what the Saturday and Sunday starter looks like, right? And I think that's what you saw with Illinois State is that they threw a lot of good arms, several good arms at us Friday, and was very important for them to win that Friday game, right? And then you see a game, that first game on Sunday, where they walked 12 guys. Right, they walked 12 OSU batters in the game, right? That's the difference between the Friday guy and the Saturday or Sunday guy in some of those mid-level teams or even the bottom-tier teams. OSU has to find a way to consistently be better against Friday night starters, has to be consistently better against a midweek opponent that's going to throw somebody that may be one of their top three guys or whatever the case is, right? And do that more consistently, not just a 3-2 win against Winthrop and then turn around the next day on Wednesday and get beat by Winthrop. We've got to consistently find ways to win a 3-2 ball game and then come out and smash them, the opponent like we did Saturday and Sunday, right? And get to the bullpen, get to the books guy. That used to be the terminology when I was in college, right?
Yeah.
Get to the books.
Yes.
Right? Get to the guy that's on books. Right? Survive long enough with the starter, get him deep into pitch counts, get quality hits off of him, put the ball in play, create the other team, put some pressure on the team to create some errors, that sort of thing, and get to the books guy, right? But what we
meaning the guys that don't have the full scholarship.
That's correct.
All they're getting is their books paid.
The guy that's getting their books paid for, right?
Yeah.
And anyway, OSU has to be more consistent in their approach. And I think that's exactly what Coach Holliday has talked about, the competitive endurance, right?
Yes.
And we talked about that last week and said that we're probably going to continue to talk about this week after week. He's mentioned it. I think it's been a concern of his, right, that he thinks he has a quality ball club. He thinks he has an elite offensive group. But is the competitive endurance there to go out day after day after day? I mean, think about it. You go Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. I mean, a lot of baseball. Right. And a lot of baseball, you're getting one day off in between your next games. There's not this huge, it's not your early on the season. It hasn't been the typical Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday midweek, and then you have Wednesday, Thursday rest, and then play again. I mean, it's been one day rest. You're playing again. Right.
And then the travel days have been weird too. That affects play. It's not just the days off. It's like in the minor leagues when you get a day off and it's after a home game and then your next series at home and you get to actually stay in your own bed. Right. That's the travel days have been weird.
But here's the point to that. Illinois State hasn't played a home game yet.
Yeah, true.
Right? So Illinois State is showing up to Stillwater, not sleeping in their own bed. They've played 12 games or 13 games, whatever, and have not had a home game yet.
Yeah.
Right? Which is reflective in their record of 3-8 or 3-9, whatever it is now. But those guys are going through the same things our guys going through.
Yes.
And where I get frustrated as a fan, former coach, whatever the case is throw all that crap out the window, because there's 2 teams on the field today and somebody's got to win. Right? It might as well be us.
Yes.
Right? And what are we going to do to consistently be better, right? To draw more walks as opposed to striking out 13, 14, 15, 17 times a game, right? What are we going to do on a consistent basis to improve that competitive endurance where we win a 3-2 ball game and then we win a 14-1 ball game, right? Not win a 3-2 ball game and then turn around and get beat by the same team in a midweek, right? Not to say that we shouldn't have midweek losses. It's baseball. You're not going to have a perfect
or clunkers for that matter. Yeah.
But it's just in the way it's played, and it's the way you lose, right? It's in the first weekend of the season, the second game out, there was a noticeable change about being more aggressive with balls in the zone and having a two-strike approach and hitting balls the other way. And now all of a sudden we're back to trying to pull every 2-strike pitch, right? Which is why you see the strikeouts the way you do, right? Yeah. I think some of that too is that we talked about after that first weekend, or even after the first couple of weeks, that it looks like Coach Holiday has a lineup set that he likes, and that we haven't seen the shuffling of the lineup as much as we have. And now we're back to, with a couple of injuries, we're having to shuffle the lineup a lot.
Yeah,
so
right.
I think that combined with the amount of baseball that's being played, they look tired.
Yes.
Right? They look
mentally and physically.
They look tired in that second game. Well, they looked tired in both games in the Winthrop series. They looked tired on the Friday game, right, against Illinois State. That Saturday getting rained out or weathered out, where the case is, I think helped them. And then you combine that with a few injuries that you've got going on and the shuffling of the lineup that's had to happen because of that. I think it's created some inconsistencies, right? But the one thing that continues to be consistent, right, that is troublesome or worrisome for a lot of people, is the amount of strikeouts that you're averaging per game when you've been labeled as an elite offensive team. Okay, that's got to get fixed. Right? We can't continue, and in my opinion, and you hear people talk about the leadoff role. Their leadoff is to take pitches or to increase pitch count from the start of the game. No, I don't agree with that. The leadoff's job is to get on base. Right. I don't care if it's a swinging third strike that gets to the backstop, if it's hit by pitch, if it's walk, if it's an error, if it's a single, if it's a double. Your job is to get on base. Right. And I think, and I've mentioned this before, I think we have to start looking at who is going to get on base. I don't care if they hit 30 home runs a year. I don't care if they hit 0 home runs a year. Who is getting on base? We have got to set the tone. How many times have you heard that as a player or a coach? Set the tone. It's hard to set the tone when your leadoff hitter's hitting 169. Okay. So those are some things that I think, just off the top of my head, offensively, I haven't even said anything about the pitching part of it, but offensively, the consistency has to get there. The walk to strikeout ratio has to be better.
That's the big one to me.
Has to get better, right? We have to do a better job of setting the tone with the guys at the top of our lineup. Right. It doesn't matter if Colin Brigham and Nolan Schubert and those guys are hitting home runs if nobody's getting on ahead of them. Right. There's a big difference between a solo home run, right, versus a 2 or 3 home run because people are on base. Right. You look at the schedule; we're a couple of weeks away from being mid-year. Right. I mean, it goes by fast.
Comes up fast.
Right? So the whole talk about early on or early season is fixing to dissolve and go away.
Yes, it is.
You're fixing to be in the middle part of your
50, 60 at bats in. That's a pretty good sample size.
You're moving from your non-conference games, your non-conference schedule, to this Friday starting your conference season. Okay. And some of these things have to get figured out, and if that means that you have to do unconventional things so that you set the tone and put people in a leadoff position that maybe aren't your typical leadoff guys, but we've got to find a way to put pressure on the pitcher and put pressure on the defense by getting on base.
Yes.
However that is. If that means that you put pressure on them by making them throw more pitches, great. If that means that you put more pressure on them because you're putting the ball in play and you're getting guys on base where you can use the small ball aspect and the bunts and the sacrifice or the squeeze and hit and runs and those type of things, by all means.
No doubt. So let me see if I can simplify it and see what you think about my simplification here. So if you get Braden going at the top of the lineup, which is a very good player, Braden Smith gets on base at the top of the lineup, Jason Jones becomes a consistent, not an explosive offensive player like we've seen, but a consistent offensive player, and then Gabe Davis becomes the Friday night starter that we need him to be. Can I simplify it? That because I think everything else is falling into place. But if I simplify it like that, what would you say?
I would say it just depends on what your expectations are for this program. Do you want to be teetering between ranked 25th and unranked, or try and get hot at the end of the year and host a regional and not make it to a super regional, or do you want to be a consistent top 10 program?
Yeah.
It's that simple. And I don't think that you could go down through any, I don't know this, I'm just throwing this off the top of my head, but what is the expectation of OSU baseball? And if the expectation is that it's gonna take time to adjust, well, we're not the only team that's got transfers.
Right.
We're not the only team that is sitting here with freshmen in their lineup, right? But what is the expectation of OSU baseball now and moving forward? Is it that we're going to be satisfied with just having a good team, or do we have the expectation that we want to be back in the top tier of where OSU baseball has been in the past and continue to be a blue blood program, right?
Right.
At what point in time is the expectation going to be or not be, right, that we can't have the mindset of it's just a matter of time while Illinois State is beating us. Right. Or when Winthrop is beating us, or when Texas State is beating us. We've lost to Texas State, Winthrop, and Illinois State this year already, early in the season, correct? At what point in time is that not the expectation? At what point in time is it that, we may not blow this team out, but we need to learn how to win a 3-2, 4-2 ball game, right? And do that back to back, or do that on a Friday night against their Friday night starter. At what point in time does the talk switch from it's a matter of time versus we need to shuffle the lineup? We may have to do some things unconventional, especially when you have injuries. It's almost like a repeat of last year, right? In that early on you had the injuries to Schubert, Miola, and that sort of thing, and it caused all the shuffling of the lineup. And we talked about how it's hard to get comfortable as a hitter if one day you show up and you're in the 2 hole, the next day you're in the 8 hole, then you go to lead off. I mean, it's very difficult to do that. And I think Coach Tom Holliday even said that on the TV broadcast. And when they're talking about your midweek games and who's going to be pitching, let them know the day before so they can sleep on it. They can think about it. They can be prepared and that sort of thing. So anyway, that's my comment to that. Is I don't think OSU's in any different situation when it comes to road games or transfers, or, it's a matter of time when they get hot, that sort of thing. They're in no different situation in that regard, in my opinion, than any other Division I team. They're not in any different situation in that regard to Illinois State. They're not in any different situation in that regard to Winthrop or Texas State. So anyway, I just think that it's time to get some consistency at the plate. That doesn't mean that you're never going to strike out. Nobody's asking for 0 strikeouts, but the days of striking out 15, 17 times has to end. Yeah. Has to end.
Especially if it's not matched with a ratio of walks that makes them at least some of the at-bats, and going deep into counts matter, right?
Yeah, but I think you do have the potential for it to be an elite offensive group. Yes. Right? But striking out 13, 15, 17 times against people like Texas State or Winthrop or Illinois State, that's going to end, right? Yeah. And that doesn't mean that Illinois State's not good enough to beat you. You know this as well as a coach. If they're good enough to put on the uniform and to carry a bat in the ballpark, they're good enough to beat you, right? That's the way this sport is, and it's going to happen. You're going to lose games that you probably shouldn't, but it's in the manner that you lose them, right? Yeah, right. And it just can't continue to happen if OSU wants to be considered in that upper echelon teams that are, in the hunt to be in Omaha in June.
Right. What do you think the ceiling and what do you think the floor is of this team?
I think the ceiling is they can beat the number 1 ranked team in the nation, and the floor is they can get beat by Texas State.
Yeah, right.
And, last week we were talking about, they had already played Winthrop in the first game. They hadn't played Winthrop in the second game when we had our conversation. And we were talking about, based on being able to go out and win a 3-2 ball game when you're mentally and emotionally exhausted after playing Texas A&M, Mississippi State, and Tennessee, that maybe that tells us that the Texas State game was the exception, not the rule. I don't know that you can say that now, right?
Yeah,
After
right.
getting beat the second game against Winthrop and losing the Friday game to Illinois State. So it's just 1 week it looks like you're climbing the hill, and the previous week was the exception, not the rule. And then the next week you're back to talking about, well, maybe that's not, but Texas State wasn't the exception. That's just a roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
And again, to me, it's not that you get beat in a midweek game. It's that you're striking out 13 to 17 times against the Texas States and the Winthrops and the Illinois States.
Right.
And I think that's where you hear a lot of talk from OSU fans in regards to the offenses. My gosh, it seems like we strike out a lot. And
yeah,
we do.
right.
We do.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Coach, you got any final thoughts here? This has been a great conversation. And again, hey, there are no two bigger fans in OSU as far as Oklahoma State baseball goes. No two bigger fans of Josh Holliday, Rob Walton, or everything that's going on with the program. That none of this is meant to be any of that. These are the emotions that we have as fans as far as the way that we view Oklahoma State baseball. So any final thoughts, Coach?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be clear about that. If there's nobody I'd rather have at the helm of OSU baseball than Josh Holliday. There's nobody I'd rather have at the helm of our pitching staff than Rob Walton, right? And to be honest with you, and I've said this has got the potential to be a very exciting ball club, and at times they are very exciting.
Yes.
Right? But the frustration comes in the inconsistencies and the walk to strikeout ratios and those sort of things that really are very glaring in the midweek games against teams that you shouldn't lose to, right? Mm-hmm. And again, in this sport, you're going to lose to teams that you shouldn't at times, right? But it's in the manner that you're losing them. And so this isn't an indictment on anybody. It's we're ready to going into conference play. We're ready for it to be more consistent and for us to continue to put pressure on the defenses and the pitching staffs based on our approach to the plate and not be easy outs by swinging and missing and that sort of thing. So none of this has anything to do with our love for OSU. Like you said, there's no two bigger fans, and there's nobody we would rather have at the helm of OSU baseball. And I wouldn't trade our players for any other players in the world, right? But let's get consistent, right?
Yeah,
let's not play to the level of the opponent that we're playing. Let's play to the level of the expectation that people have for you.
Thanks, Coach. For Robbie Rainwater, making it rain today, I'm Casey Porter of OkState Daily. Go Pokes.
Go Pokes.